418, and testimony took us right up until the end of the deal. We did not have a lot of questions, time for questions. So we're going to open up the meeting tonight or today with Senate Bill 418, and I'd like to call the Senator Rose, come up and take questions. And we do have one person online that would be able to take questions also, I think.
They're not all in yet.
Oh, there's not. Okay, we're going to take Senator Rose. Okay, Senator Falscadeau.
Mr. Chairman, could your staff just give somewhat of a quick briefing again on what the legislation was?
Maybe we could have Senator Rose do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd be happy to do that, and thank you for the question. Thank you, Chair. As the reviser stated yesterday, she did a great job yesterday, and she explained the what it is. I'm going to explain the why and the how, which will kind of answer your question. There are 5 components to the bill. 3 of those components are intended to speed up the construction process of new homes, because when there are delays in construction, it drives up the cost. And even some opponent testimony yesterday acknowledged that on the part of cities, they have delays. The excuses given yesterday was they don't have staff, or staff is part-time, but there are delays. So 3 parts of this bill speeds up the construction process. One way that it does that is the by right, making it more efficient. And then the third-party review speeds up the process, and the protest petition. And then lowering the cost of materials for houses under 3,000 square feet lowers the cost of materials. And then the zoning single-family houses in every part of a city.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So lowering the price of construction, so would that be for, like sometimes we'll give a tax exemption to, like in my town once, for the machinery to build a Ronald McDonald House. So would that piece of the measure stay in place for all construction, or just that specific need that you're speaking to? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are you asking, Mr. Yeah. Are you asking if this legislation would have any impact on the McDonald's house, or?
Oh, no. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I'm not. I know it won't. But no, you said that for certain areas, the 3,000, et cetera, that area, lowering the price on materials or construction. Well, explain.
Okay.
I want to know if it's across the board or just for this project.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. The way the bill is worded is for houses that are less than 3,000 square feet in size. And the way it saves money on the materials is cities around the state are currently adopting the 2024 building code. And as I stated yesterday, that drives up the cost of materials, from what builders tell me, by about $30,000 per house. So the bill says that cities have to allow the 2018 building code. Now, a city might not have a building code at all, or they might allow the 2006 code, and that's fine. But what the point is that we're not going to allow cities to price Kansans out of buying a new home by demanding a more expensive code than the 2018 code. The only reason for the 2024 code is energy. It has, and talking to Fire Marshal, it has nothing to do with fire safety.
Any other questions? Senator? Okay. We do have, I think that's the only questions we have for Senator. We do have Stanley online, and she was with Olathe. Are there any questions for Ms. Stanley? Seeing none? Seeing none? We will close the hearing on 418, and we'll thank you very much for being here today. Appreciate you being here. So we'll move on to Senate Bill 335, and could staff give us an overview of that bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Senate Bill number 335 relates to public construction contracts and would amend the Kansas Fairness in Public Construction Contract Act to require such contracts include a mutual waiver of consequential damages. Specifically, new Section 1 of the bill would provide that any contract for public construction entered into by a public entity and a contractor shall include a mutual waiver of consequential damages, substantially in the form that is provided in the bill. And you can find the language in the bill on page 1, and I also have it restated for you in your bill brief. It essentially provides that the contractor and owner waive claims against each other for consequential damages arising out of or relating to the contract. The mutual waiver includes but is not limited to 1, damages incurred by the owner for rental expenses, for loss of use, income, profit, financing, business and reputation, and for loss of management or employee productivity, or of the services of such persons. And number 2, it is not the waiver includes damages incurred by the contractor for principal office expenses, including but not limited to the compensation of personnel stationed in such office, for losses of financing, business and reputation, and for loss of profit, except anticipated profit arising directly from the construction. KSA 16-1902 of the Act provides definitions of several terms, including construction, contract, contractor, owner, and public entity. And for purposes of reviewing this new section, you might be interested to know that public entity means the state of Kansas, political subdivisions, cities, counties, state universities and colleges, school districts, all special districts, joint agreement entities, public authorities, public trusts, nonprofit corporations, and other organizations that are operated with public money for the public good. The bill would allow the public entity and contractor to identify in such contract additional items of consequential damages that are waived as specifically needed for the applicable construction project. The bill also provides that the provisions of Section 1 would control if a public entity and contractor enter into a contract containing language that conflicts with the new section. This new section would be a part of and supplemental to the Kansas Fairness and Public Construction Contract Act, which can be found at KSA 16-1901 at SEC. And the bill would also amend KSA 16-1901 and 1907 of that act to allow the new provisions of Section 1, notwithstanding the Act's general provisions that provide that the rights and duties under the Act are not waivable, and that any provision waiving the rights of a party to collect damages for delays caused by another party to the contract are void, unenforceable, and against public policy. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Or we have questions? Committee, questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Our first proponent is Vice President Senator Tim Schellenberger. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, and I am a proponent. I introduced the bill, but I don't have any written testimony, so Connie, don't. But I am not going to. You can tell by the explanation, this is way over my head. The reason that I introduced the bill is a year ago I got a call from one of my constituents, Ivan Croston, who owns Croston Construction Company. He said, well, I got a little problem with the state contract. And he explained it to me, and I didn't understand it at all. But I did call the Secretary of Administration. Secretary of Administration met with the attorneys for Cross, and I think they worked it out that time. It appeared again in another contract, and I thought maybe it's time that we just address this issue, because these clauses were starting to appear in these public contracts that were not in the best interest of, in my opinion, the state or the contractor. So I introduced the bill. Most of the bill information came from the attorney at Crossland, Gina Atterbury, and I would be happy to yield to her and let her be your first conferee.
Thank you for being here.
Don't ask me any questions.
Will you stay if there are any questions for you? Okay, thank you. Okay. Gina Atterbury is the General Counsel for Crossland Construction Company, and welcome to a committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As you've heard, my name is Gina Atterbury. I serve as General Counsel for Crossland Construction Company and its related entities. That's Crossland Heavy Contractors and Crossland Prefab in Columbus, Kansas, and also Pre-Stress Concrete Construction in Newton, Kansas. Is that better? All right. Crossland does a lot of public work in the state of Kansas. This includes colleges, universities, schools, parks, municipal, county, state buildings, wastewater treatment plants, bridges, highways, and other governmental work. We have 12 offices in the Midwest and surrounding area, and we do 400 to 500 construction contracts per year. This bill, as was described, would amend Kansas statutes to require public construction contracts to include standard mutual waiver of consequential damages. This means both parties would waive their consequential damages, and those kinds of damages are the damages that don't go to the core purpose of the construction contract, such as loss of anticipated profits on other jobs, loss of business reputation, loss of additional financing that's necessary if a job takes longer than expected, those types of items. This mutual waiver of damages language comes from standard contracts used by many contractors and most public entities in the state of Kansas called the American Institute of Architects forms. In fact, the language can be found in section A201 of the 2017 edition of the AIA form. This bill is necessary because several public entities have been citing a Kansas Department of Administration Form DA-146A, paragraph 7, which they have been interpreting to require deletion of the mutual waiver of consequential damages provision or revision of the provision so that only the contractor is waiving its consequential damages against the owner. That's basically why we're here today. As Senator Schallenberger explained, we have had this come up in our real life, everyday work. We had a Kansas job where the public entity wanted to hire us, but citing the Form DA-146, they said they would have to strike the standard mutual waiver of consequential damages from our contract. When we explained our risk to the owner, they wanted to maintain the right to make claims of consequential damages against us up to $50 million. Well, this was a $24 million contract where Crossland was getting a 2% fee. So that really made no sense for us. We worked with them for several months and tried to work it out, and were not able to for several months. However, eventually we did work it out with them, adding back the mutual waiver of consequential damages. And we're nearly complete with this project now, and it looks like we're coming in at about $2 million under budget. Crossland is not being asked to delete this language in its private contracts, and we do a lot of work with large national companies like Walmart, Target, and Coke. And we're also not being asked to delete this provision in our other states with public entities. So this is not a good situation for public project owners or for Crossland. It's vitally important that contractors be able to evaluate, price, and manage their risk on any construction project. Contractors can reasonably do this with things like weather delays, material shortages, problems with subcontractors, labor issues, but it is not reasonable or cost efficient to ask a contractor to price in an impossible to measure risk, such as consequential damages. How do you ask a contractor to price a project where one claim on this project could wipe out his entire company? This is an even more disproportionate problem for the small subcontractors that work for Crossland on these jobs. If contractors are exposed to unpredictable and catastrophic risk only on public jobs, they may pass on these jobs, or they may aggressively increase pricing of the job to offset the increased costs of insurance and bonds, of finding subcontractors willing to participate, and creating themselves a cushion in case of a catastrophic claim. Meanwhile, the cost of the public project continue to go up due to lack of bidding interest and higher bids from those people who do participate. Please keep in mind that the mutual waiver of consequential damages does not prevent the parties from making direct claims for their direct damages under the contract. Further, public owners have liquidated damages where they can get some leverage against the contractor for delay or damages arising from those delays. And they also have the contractor's performance and payment bonds to assist with issues relating to performance and payment issues. These are the standard, fair, and cost-efficient ways for the parties to protect themselves in construction contracts. This bill will require public construction contracts to include a standard mutual waiver of consequential damages. This will benefit not only public project owners and contractors, but will allow these people to build projects at best value for the state of Kansas. The Crossland companies urge you to advance this important measure for the benefit of all Kansans. We really appreciate the support of Senator Schallenberger for introducing this legislation, Chair Larry Alley, and the committee Commerce members for your time and consideration today. Thank you.
Will you stay for questions at
Certainly.
the appropriate time? Thank you very much. Our next conferee is Mike Gibson, Senior Executive Vice President and Associate General Contractors. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee. My name is Mike Gibson. I'm the Executive Vice President for Associated General Contractors of Kansas. It's great to see all of you. AGC of Kansas is the largest construction trade association in the state of Kansas for commercial, industrial, utility construction firms, 300 construction firms and 20,000 employees. I know that Crossland Construction just testified. This is not just a Crossland construction issue. It's a industry issue here in Kansas. And I think all of you are aware of that. But thank you for the opportunity to support Senate Bill 355. This bill's language is geared to standardize risk allocation in public construction contracts by ensuring both sides know they aren't exposed to unpredictable indirect loss claims, which in turn promotes competition and reduces litigation risk, which was just in the testimony before me. Direct and liquidated damages remain, while the consequential damages like rental or relocation expenses, lost revenue, or profits from a delayed or unfinished project, loss of use of property, or loss of business reputation, or even increased financing or carrying costs are statutorily waived. Most negotiations lend to the waive issue of damages, and it makes sense to go ahead and create a statutory law that creates more efficiency in the contracting environment for both sides, both the state of Kansas and the construction industry. I will tell you that the lion's share of the states across the country have this type of language, and it would promote a fair and level playing field for all involved. And as stated in a previous testimony, there's other items to protect the state of Kansas in terms of their interest on their side of the fence, but it would be fair and equitable for everybody and promote that type competition, I know, which Kansas is known for. So I stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Next conferee is Mr. Eric Stafford, Vice President of Government Affairs, Kansas Chamber. Eric, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee members. Eric Stafford with the Kansas Chamber. Gina did a fantastic job. Mike did a great job on their testimony. This was brought to our attention again from Crossland, who's a member of ours, but we do have multiple contractors and subcontractors who are members, and overall appears to be a fairness issue where the state seems to be leveraging a position against private companies who are doing work on their behalf, when the industry standard is to, in the AI docs and consensus docs, to have that mutual waiver there. And I think this is a fair piece of legislation if this is something that's happening. So they went through the details and all that, so happy to answer any questions, but I'll pull a Senator Schallenberger and say that they're better experts than I, but do appreciate the opportunity to be here in support of this today.
Thank you very much for being here. Our last conferee for proponents is Monica Donatelli. Monica is Vice President, Surety, IMA Insurance. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Is that good? Okay. I want to thank the Senate Committee on Commerce for your time and hearing testimony in favor of the proposed Senate Bill 335. My name is Monica Donatelli. As you shared, I'm a lifelong Kansan. I am raising my family, my young family of Kansans on the Kansas side of the Kansas City Metro. So just got Kansas in there about 7 times in that intro. In my professional capacity, I am Vice President of Surety within IMA Inc. IMA is a retail brokerage firm for risk management founded in Wichita, Kansas, and operating here and throughout the United States. I am also the elected first Vice President of the National Surety Association, and assuming my peers elect me later this year, I will be president of that association soon. The bill before you today would provide guidance and uniformity to construction contracts in the state of Kansas. That alone is beneficial. But I believe there are additional benefits this bill provides to the state and its taxpayers. I will share some of those with you today. You all have my written testimony outlining some of the enforceable and measurable protections in place today in construction contracts with the state of Kansas. Liquidated damages, comprehensive insurance coverages, and performance and payment bonds in surety. That's where I live. They are all act to ensure Kansas contracts are the most Kansas attracts the most qualified construction contractors, and each of those are considered standard in the public owner construction space. I am happy to dive into any of those topics today, submit any additional information for the committee's review if requested. I would like to spend my time today not focused on the testimony provided, but sharing with you why I believe the passage of Senate Bill 335 is of the benefit to the state of Kansas and our taxpayers. The first is project cost control. Undefinable risk, such as consequential damages, inserts additional risk into any contract. To account for this risk, reputable firms will adjust their compensation to meet any real or perceived uncertainty. This understandable pricing strategy may cause contract project costs to exceed what might otherwise be bid, costing the state and ultimately the taxpayers of Kansas additional dollars with each and every project. The second is contract competition. The undefinable risk that the exclusion of a mutual waiver of consequential damages inserts into contracting with the state can discourage or make state contracts inaccessible to smaller construction companies and/or subcontractors to larger general contractors working with the state. Fair, competitive bidding is essential to public construction procurement, and I believe it is upheld in this bill. The third reason is reduced litigation. How does one prove consequential damages? Damages that are not necessarily directly tied to one's actions nor clearly defined. That answer lies in lengthy and costly lawsuits, which regardless of the final judgment will find the state spending money for that litigation and either a judgment against the state or collecting a judgment that, if against a small business, is unlikely to be collectible due to the strain the litigation would put upon that small business. So what do? The first piece is already done. Remember those liquidated damages, and I think everyone's covered those very clearly, so thank you. Remember those liquidated damage provisions in my written testimony? These are upfront agreed upon costs to the contractor meant to define monetary risk of late project completion. Likewise, the insurance coverages required by state contracts that exist specifically to ensure risks associated with construction contract. And finally, here come those surety bonds again. Those surety bonds guaranteeing that if a contractor is defaulted from a job, the state has access to 100% contract value performance protection along with all those subcontractors, suppliers, and anyone who worked on the project that may not have been paid enjoy 100% contract value protection of those payments. The next part of what we do is in your hands in supporting Senate Bill 335. Thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions.
Very much.
Okay.
We do have written testimony from Taggart Wall, City Manager of Winfield. We'll now move to opponent testimony. Mr. John Goodyear, General Counsel for League of Municipalities. John, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good morning. My name is John Goodyear, and I serve as the General Counsel for the League of Kansas Municipalities. Our opposition to the bill isn't necessarily to the principle of the bill. It's more to, we oppose things that restrict our freedom to contract. Here, this bill prohibits our ability to negotiate terms that reflect the unique risks, responsibilities, and circumstances of an individual project. It eliminates our ability to negotiate based on the unique needs, wants of our city. Kansas law has long recognized that parties are generally the ones that are best positioned to allocate risk through the terms of their contract. In some projects, a mutual waiver is beneficial, it is appropriate, and I'll say it's not uncommon. It's incredibly common in municipal contracts to have that mutual waiver. But in other contracts, retaining those consequential damages is necessary to protect against harm. The restriction is particularly problematic in public construction contracts, specifically preventing public entities from negotiating the terms of the contract and negotiating on consequential damages, regardless of the project scope or risk profile or what it is that we're working on. It undermines our ability to manage projects responsibly and to protect public resources, public property, public funds. You've heard the term liquidated damages. The proponents are right in that regard. While liquidated damages are going to be our standard remedy in most contracts, it's important to recognize that there are going to be some projects, and they are admittedly limited, where consequential damages are not only the most appropriate remedy, they might be the only remedy that we have. Liquidated damages are those that we've agreed to in a contract. They're actual damages that include specific sums. They include a formula that's laid out to show what the damage is going to be. But where we're talking about consequential damages, they are difficult to predict. It's not something, and you heard the proponents say that, they're difficult to predict. So recognizing that there's going to be circumstances where there is a lost income or there is a rental cost to a municipal government that cannot be contemplated in the basic terms of the contract. Consequential damages, retention of those is helpful. Again, it's our position that this should just be something that individual cities are able to negotiate on their own. I heard the proponents refer to a state form, DA 146A, and a term in that form that is confusing. I will say that form isn't incorporated into city contracts. And I think maybe potentially instead of painting with the broad stroke that this legislation does, covering all public entities, that maybe there's some clarification that could be done on that form to affect those entities that incorporate those forms into their contract. But that is our reason for opposition. We appreciate the ability to negotiate these terms individually on the contract based on the scope of that contract, based on what we're working on, and we think that we would like for cities to retain that ability to do so. So that is our opposition. Mr. Chairman, I'll answer questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Member. Here we'll take questions in just a moment. So, okay, committee, we also have written opponent Amanda Stanley, General Counsel, City of Olathe. It's in your packet. And so at this time, we'll open it back up for questions from our conferees. Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One, if the chair would allow, I have one clarifying question for the reviser and then for the opponent. Can you tell me, last year there was a bill that would have required all cities to use the DA 146A. Do we know if that, it's sounding like it didn't pass, but I lost track of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for the question. I don't actually remember the bill number on that. That was specific to cities of the second and third class. That never got above the line in the Senate, so it did not become law.
And then along those lines, did you offer testimony in support of that bill?
We did support that legislation in application to cities of the second and third class. The reason for doing so, that makes that legislation non-uniform and gives cities of the first class that typically have in-house counsel that are sophisticated, and not to say that other city attorneys aren't sophisticated. They have a little bit more time to spend in these contracts and negotiate these terms, and because it was non-uniform, it would give those cities of the second and third class the option to opt out of the incorporation of that form, but they would be able to take advantage of those terms if they wanted to.
Olathe and Oskaloosa have different levels of sophistication in contracting, but I just asked that question to kind of raise the point that, the DA 146 prohibits a private entity from being able to limit the state's damages in any way. And so it seems that you have no objection to limiting private parties' ability to contract by law, but you, of course, want municipalities to have as much freedom as possible?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. I will qualify our support of the legislation. That legislation was brought by a city specifically. It's hard to oppose legislation brought by a member, and that's why we worked with that committee to make that legislation non-uniform, to give cities the ability to utilize that form when they wanted to. It was more a local control issue than the specific, any specific thing within the DA 146A form. It was just a measure to try to ensure local control where it was wanted and needed to utilize in negotiating contract terms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Fausto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for staff as well first. So if this legislation passed, would this include residential projects or just corporate projects or just projects with, let's say, Crossland and City of Wichita? So who would it include? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, the bill relates to, just simply provides for, that it relates to a contract for public construction, and that it's between the contractor and the owner is defined as a public entity. And so those were the types of entities that I provided. It doesn't specifically say what type of project, other than public construction.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So my question is for Gina. So Gina, as you approach the podium, I just wanted to say I appreciate your old school handy dandy work. You wrote down your own notes, and you were reading your own notes in your own handwriting, so you knew this by heart. Thank you for that. So, question for you. So, of what the staff member just provided to you, couldn't that be handled through your original contract? Maybe, maybe not. But isn't that what insurance is for?
So the problem that we have now is that the can of worms has been opened, and we have public entities who are now familiar with the form and the fact that many of the public entities have been striking the mutual waiver of consequential damages because of the form. And so we're hearing this from public entities that aren't even incorporating the form into their contract. So I don't think it could be dealt with other than by statute at this point. But the liquidated damages, the combination of liquidated damages, insurance, and bonds, I think do adequately protect the owner from the kinds of damages that owners would experience on a construction project. And the liquidated damages amount can be damages that would otherwise be considered consequential. So if the owner has an event coming at the end of the construction, they could actually factor the cost of the delay to that event into their liquidated damages amount. So that's a really flexible tool for owners to use. I hope I've answered your question.
Absolutely, you did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if I may, can I ask Michael Gibson a question?
You may.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Gibson, so you're supportive of the legislation. You've testified in favor, but you also live in my neck of the woods near Wichita, Kansas. So why would they be in opposition to this?
Well, I haven't talked to anybody outside of the opponent today that has been against this. The great thing that you as policymakers have done over the last several years is you've made Kansas very competitive, and obviously it's producing results in the fact that we're getting more economic development across this state, and whether it be public or private. For example, the Panasonic project had a combination of both public works to put in infrastructure, vital infrastructure that Panasonic needed to support that plant, and obviously to attract those companies to bid on that work. This type language would increase the likelihood, especially a small general contractor or a small subcontractor that wants to do these type projects, when they see these type forms and these type I'll call it barriers or impediments to moving things forward, it could come back to haunt our economic development opportunities in the future. And like I said, every economic development project that y'all have attracted in the 15 years I've been in Kansas is a private, but it also requires public support. So in this particular case, I think that this would move the ball farther down the field to increase the likelihood of a lot of small to medium-sized Kansas companies to feel more comfortable. Obviously, companies like Crossland, and I represent a broad constituency of large, medium, and small contractors. But I did some canvassing as this bill became reality, and it's been met with a tremendous amount of positive responses.
And Mr. Chairman, just follow it just quickly. So if this legislation doesn't pass, then what happens?
Well, I think status quo will be in place, and I think you will see a reluctance in some cases of companies wanting to engage in competitive bidding on public-funded projects. And I think that's not a message that we want to send with all the momentum that you as policymakers, and again, I brag on you all, you policymakers all over the country in the meetings I go to, because we have set a standard with the kind of in business-friendly environment. But this just would increase that opportunities in the future. Thank you, Madam Senator. Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the hearing today, and we will close on the hearing on Senate Bill 335. I do want to bring to your attention, committee, our for next week on the 10th of February, we will have Senate Bill 396 or 369. I'll get it right. Senate Bill 369. On February 11th, we're going to have a joint meeting with House Commerce, and it's on unemployment insurance modernization. And then on February 12th, we'll have Senate Bill 429, which is extending the sunset of the angel investor tax credit. So that is and we do have a meeting tomorrow. Yes. So with that, if there's any more business, yes, Senator Close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and apologize for being a little late, but had another committee working on. And point of personal privilege, I have Savannah Cruz back there, intern for this session, and just wanted to acknowledge her today. Thank you.
Welcome. Good to have you here. Thank you. Any other business? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.